A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Herman, I was looking through some old files in the attic the other day. Well, the digital equivalent of an attic, our shared server, and I came across some photos from your time in Connecticut. It got me thinking. We've been doing this show for a long time, 959 episodes to be exact, and yet there are still these massive gaps in your biography that you just gloss over. You always talk about the principles of order and geopolitical stability, but we rarely talk about where the donkey actually learned the trade.
Nostalgia is a dangerous thing, Corn. It starts with a simple photo of a sunset over Horsebarn Hill, and before you know it, you are drowning in the past. But you are right, Storrs is a special place. It is more than just a pin on a map. It is the bedrock of my formative years. There is a specific smell to the air there in late September, a mix of damp oak leaves, silage from the dairy barns, and the faint electric hum of a university waking up for the fall semester. It is a place where the dirt is honest and the intellect is rigorous.
Well, today is the day we fill in those gaps. Our housemate Daniel was actually asking about this recently, wondering where exactly a talking donkey gets an education in agricultural policy. He seemed convinced you were part of some experimental government program, but I told him I would get the story straight from the source. So, we decided to take the reins ourselves for this episode and dive into the origins of Herman Poppleberry. Or, as I suspect, the origins of the operative formerly known as Herman. Because, let's be real, Herman Poppleberry is the most witness protection program name I have ever heard.
Herman Poppleberry at your service, as always. And there is no mystery here, Corn. I was a student, a scholar, and perhaps a bit of a local legend on the campus of the University of Connecticut. If you want to understand me, you have to understand Storrs. It is this beautiful, isolated pocket of intellectualism and agriculture tucked away in the woods of Mansfield. It was founded on the idea that practical knowledge, the kind that keeps a civilization fed, is the highest form of service.
It sounds idyllic, almost too idyllic, like a perfect staging ground for something else. A quiet, rural village where no one asks questions about the four-legged student in the back of the lecture hall. But before we get into my theories on your alleged espionage career, let's talk about the place itself. Storrs. It is not even its own town, right? It is a village within the town of Mansfield.
It is a census-designated place, a distinction that highlights its unique status. It is named after Charles and Augustus Storrs, two brothers who had a vision for agricultural education in the late 19th century. In 1881, they donated 170 acres of land and $6,000 to start the Storrs Agricultural School. At the time, Connecticut was struggling to figure out how to implement the Morrill Land-Grant Acts. The state had originally given the land grant status to Yale, but the farmers of Connecticut felt that a prestigious Ivy League school wasn't exactly focused on the grit and grime of actual farming. They wanted a place that belonged to the people.
Right, the Morrill Acts. That was 1862. Signed by Abraham Lincoln, right in the middle of the Civil War. That was a massive shift in American policy, wasn't it? Moving away from the classical, elite European model of education towards something more practical and accessible. It was essentially the government saying that the future of the Union depended on scientific farming and mechanical engineering.
It was revolutionary, Corn. It was the democratization of the intellect. The idea was that the federal government would grant land to the states, which the states would then sell to fund colleges focused on agriculture and the mechanic arts. It was about building the backbone of a growing nation, and Storrs was Connecticut's answer to that call. It started small, just 3 faculty members and 13 students, but it represented a fundamental belief that the man behind the plow, or the donkey in the pasture, deserved the same level of rigorous scientific education as the man in the law office. By the time I arrived, it had grown into a world-class research university, but that original mission of public service remained.
It is interesting you frame it that way, as the backbone of the nation. It fits that pro-American industrious spirit we talk about. But I have to ask, how did a talking donkey fit into the curriculum of a modern university? Did you have to take the SATs? Did you have a specialized desk in the lecture halls of the young building?
The University of Connecticut is a remarkably inclusive institution. Corn. Once I proved my intellectual mettle, the administrative hurdles became secondary. I was a unique asset to the agricultural department. Who better to understand the needs of livestock than someone who can actually articulate them? I spent most of my time on Horsebarn Hill. If you have never been there, it is the highest point on the campus. It is this rolling expanse of pasture land where the university keeps its livestock, the famous dairy cows, the sheep, and the horses. Standing there at dawn, looking out over the fog rolling through the valleys of Mansfield, you feel a sense of order and purpose. I wasn't just a student, I was a bridge between the faculty and the subjects of their study. I helped refine the protocols for equine metabolic research and provided first-hand data on ruminant digestion that a human researcher could only guess at.
A bridge. That is a very diplomatic way of putting it. But let's look at the timeline. You are in Storrs, studying agricultural policy, walking the hills, and then suddenly you are traveling the world. You are in Eastern Europe in the early 90s. You are in the Middle East during the height of the resource conflicts. You are here in Jerusalem. The transition seems abrupt. One minute you are looking at silage yields on Horsebarn Hill, and the next you are discussing geopolitical stability in the Levant. You expect me to believe you were just a traveling scholar who happened to be in every global hotspot right when things got interesting.
It is all connected. Corn. Agriculture is the foundation of geopolitics. If a nation cannot feed itself, it cannot govern itself. My studies in Storrs gave me a unique perspective on resource management and institutional resilience. When I left Connecticut, I was simply applying those principles on a larger scale. I was a consultant, a traveling scholar. If a developing nation was struggling with wheat distribution or irrigation infrastructure, I was there to provide a technical framework for stability.
A consultant. That is the classic cover, Herman. You know it, I know it, and I'm pretty sure our listeners know it. Poppleberry. It sounds like a name generated by a computer to be as unassuming and non-threatening as possible. Like something out of a British intelligence handbook. Send in the donkey, no one will suspect the donkey. Are you sure Poppleberry is not a code name? Maybe an acronym? POP-PLEBERRY. Primary operative for policy, logistics, and environmental. Something.
It is a proud name, corn, and I assure you my interest in crop rotation and soil science was entirely genuine. There is no cloak and dagger here, just a very well-educated donkey with a passion for public policy. I was simply a product of the land-grant system doing exactly what the system was designed to do, taking specialized knowledge and applying it to improve the lives of the citizenry. Whether that citizenry is in Tolan County or the Buckeye Valley is irrelevant to the science.
We will see about that. But let's go back to the environment of Storrs. For years, it was consistently ranked as one of the safest places in the entire United States. Money Magazine, the FBI statistics, they all pointed to this one little corner of Connecticut as a bastion of security. Why is that? Why was it so safe? Was it because it was a town full of academics? Or was it because it was a highly monitored, controlled environment?
That is where the discussion of resilience and redundancy comes in, which we have touched on in past episodes, like episode 816 when we talked about the evolution of human order. Storrs is a planned community in many ways, centered around the university. The infrastructure is robust, the population is highly educated and engaged, and there is a deep sense of social cohesion. Safety isn't just the absence of crime, it is the presence of stability. The university has its own police department, its own fire department, and its own medical facilities. It is a self-contained ecosystem.
Or, from a different perspective, it is an isolated, controlled environment with limited entry points and a high degree of surveillance. Think about it. Route 195 and Route 44 are the only major ways in. If you were looking for a location to house a high-level operative, or a talking donkey with sensitive knowledge, a place that is statistically the safest in the country is a pretty good bet. It is the perfect place to hide something in plain sight. You weren't a student, Herman. You were an asset being kept in a high-security safe town until you were ready for deployment.
You are seeing shadows where there are only sunbeams, corn. The safety of Storrs comes from its design. It is a land-grant institution. Its very purpose is to serve the public good. That creates a specific kind of atmosphere. It is a place where you can leave your door unlocked because everyone is there for the same reason, to learn and to contribute to the community. It is a model of what a stable, functional society can look like when it is focused on productive output rather than internal conflict. We talked about this in episode 816, how the transition from scrolls to SQL databases was about creating a more reliable record of human interaction. Storrs is the physical manifestation of that desire for a reliable, orderly record of life.
I suppose, but that stability also makes it a perfect bubble. You mentioned the Morrill Act democratizing education, but Storrs is also very much an ivory tower in the middle of a forest. It is a world unto itself. I remember you mentioning the Four Corners. That is a significant spot for you, right? The intersection of Route 195 and Route 44.
The Four Corners. It is the heart of Mansfield. It is where the university meets the town. There is a specific energy there, a blending of the academic and the rural. I used to spend hours there just observing the flow of people. You have the students rushing to class, the local farmers heading to the hardware store, and the travelers just passing through on their way to Hartford or Providence. It is a crossroads, both literally and metaphorically. In folklore, crossroads are places where the veil is thin, where choices are made. For me, it was where I decided that my education in Storrs needed to be shared with the wider world. I would sit near the old post office watching the traffic lights change and realize that the systems I was studying, the logistics of food, the flow of information, were the same systems that governed the entire planet.
See, there it is. The crossroads, the decision to go into the field. You are practically writing the script for a spy thriller here, Herman. You are at the Four Corners, the veil is thin. A black sedan pulls up, and you receive your orders to head to the border. The donkey braying at midnight, or whatever your activation phrase was.
My orders were to find a good cup of coffee and a quiet place to read a white paper on irrigation techniques. You are far too focused on the drama, Corn. The real story of Storrs is the story of quiet, persistent progress. It is the story of the Gurleyville Grist Mill, the only one of its kind left in the state. It is the birthplace of Wilbur Cross, a former governor of Connecticut and a titan of literature. I spent many afternoons at that mill listening to the Fenton River rush past. It reminds you that the world has its own rhythms, its own redundancies. The mill has been there since the 1700s. It has survived floods, economic depressions, and the total transformation of the American landscape. That is the kind of resilience we should be studying.
Speaking of the landscape, you mentioned Codfish Falls. Now that is an interesting name. Why Codfish? You are miles from the ocean. It sounds like a coded location. Meet me at the falls where the fish don't swim.
It is a bit of Mansfield folklore. Some say it is named after the shape of the rocks. Others say it was a bit of a joke by the early settlers who were homesick for the coast. But it is a place of incredible natural beauty. It is part of the Joshua's Trust Land, which is a local land conservation group. That is another form of redundancy, corn preserving the land so that the ecosystem remains stable even as the world around it changes. We talked about this in episode 639 regarding the future of survival. If you don't protect your base resources, your entire system is vulnerable. Codfish Falls is a reminder that even in a high-tech university town, the primary resource is the earth itself. I used to walk the trails there to clear my head after a particularly grueling seminar on macroeconomics. The physical resilience of those ancient rock formations puts human problems into perspective.
I can appreciate the environmental angle, but I am still stuck on the logistics. You were a talking donkey in a town that, let's be honest, is not exactly known for its diversity of species. How did the bureaucracy handle you? Did you have a student ID? Did you have to fill out FOFSA forms? Did you have a meal plan? Because I can't imagine the dining halls were serving high-quality Timothy Hay.
I did indeed have a student ID, though getting the photo taken was a bit of a challenge for the poor freshman working the desk at Wilbur Cross. As for the meal plan, I mostly stuck to the offerings at the agricultural barns. The university's dairy bar is world famous for its ice cream, but their forage quality is equally impressive. I was involved in research projects that looked at animal husbandry from an entirely new perspective. I wasn't just a student, I was a consultant for the university's own livestock operations. I helped design a more efficient feeding schedule for the sheep flock that reduced waste by 15%. That is the kind of practical application the Morrill Act was all about.
A bridge? A consultant? A researcher? You have a lot of titles, Herman. But let's talk about the architecture of the place. You mentioned Horsebarn Hill and the Four Corners, but what about the town itself? Mansfield has a very specific layout. It is decentralized. There isn't one main downtown area. It is a collection of villages.
That is very true. You have Storrs, Mansfield Center, Eagleville, Gurleyville, Mount Hope. It is a polycentric model. This actually makes the town more resilient. If one area faces an infrastructure failure, the others can continue to function. It is the opposite of a highly centralized urban core. In our episode on human order, we discussed how decentralized systems are often more robust because they lack a single point of failure. Mansfield is a living example of that. It survived the decline of the textile mills in the 19th century by diversifying into education and agriculture. When the mills in Eagleville shut down, the town didn't die, it shifted its focus to the growing college and Storrs.
It is a very conservative approach to town planning, whether they intended it or not. Preserving the old village structures, focusing on land use, maintaining a strong local identity. It fits that worldview of self-reliance and local governance. But it also creates a lot of places to hide. I have been looking at the maps of the Mansfield Hollow State Park. All those trails, all that wooded area surrounding the reservoir. It is perfect for clandestine meetings. You could disappear into those woods for weeks and never be seen.
It is perfect for hiking, Corn. The Nipmuc Trail runs right through there. It is one of the most beautiful hiking paths in New England. I used to walk sections of it when I needed to clear my head. There is something about the stillness of the Connecticut woods in autumn, with the leaves turning those brilliant shades of red and gold, that makes all the geopolitical noise feel very far away. You aren't thinking about trade deficits or border disputes when you are navigating a rocky outcrop overlooking the reservoir. You are thinking about the next step, the scent of the pine needles, and the way the light filters through the canopy.
And yet, here you are, thousands of miles away, in one of the most geopolitically noisy places on Earth. You can't tell me that the quiet of Mansfield didn't prepare you for the chaos of the world. It gave you the perfect baseline of calm to operate under pressure. You learned how to be invisible in a small town, which is the hardest place to be invisible.
I will concede that. Storrs teaches you patience. You can't rush a harvest, and you can't rush the growth of an institution. You learn to work within the cycles of nature and the cycles of bureaucracy. That patience is a vital skill, whether you are analyzing a trade agreement or just trying to navigate a faculty meeting. The university environment is a microcosm of the world. You have competing interests, limited resources, and a constant need for diplomacy. My time in Storrs was a master class in negotiation.
Speaking of patience, I have been very patient with your evasiveness. Let's talk about the name Poppleberry again. I did a search of the Mansfield historical records. I went deep into the digital archives of the Mansfield Historical Society. There are plenty of stores, plenty of Curtises, plenty of barrows. I even found a few families that have been there since the 1700s, but I couldn't find a single Poppleberry in the town records from 1881 to the present. No birth certificates, no property deeds, no graduation records for a Herman Poppleberry.
Perhaps you weren't looking in the right records, Corn. Or perhaps my family was just very good at keeping a low profile. We were never ones for the limelight. We preferred the quiet life on the edge of the campus. And as for the graduation records, the university's registrar has always been a bit traditional. They might not have known how to categorize a non-human graduate in the official ledger. I might be listed under special assets or agricultural research.
Or perhaps the name was assigned to you by a handler at the CIA's secret donkey division, Project Long Ears. You spent years in the safest town in America, building a flawless backstory, and then you were activated and sent abroad. It explains everything. The technical knowledge, the calm demeanor, the consulting work in conflict zones. You are the ultimate sleeper agent.
If I were a sleeper agent, Corn, I would be the most talkative one in history. I have spent the last 958 episodes sharing everything I know with our listeners. My life is an open book. I have discussed everything from the history of the steam engine to the future of decentralized finance. A spy would be much more guarded with his information.
An open book with several chapters redacted. But let's shift gears to the technical side of things. You mentioned the safety of Storrs. It was ranked as the safest because of its low crime rate, but also because of its emergency preparedness. The university has its own power plant, its own water supply. It is essentially a self-sustaining city-state.
That is the redundancy we keep coming back to. The University of Connecticut has invested heavily in its utility infrastructure. They have a cogeneration plant, ACHP system, that produces both electricity and heat. It uses natural gas to run turbines for power, and then captures the waste heat to create steam for heating the campus buildings. This means that even if the regional grid goes down during a major New England snowstorm, the campus can keep the lights on and the buildings warm. It is a masterclass in institutional self-reliance. It is that American spirit of being prepared for any contingency. We discussed this in episode 816, the idea that order is maintained through physical systems as much as social ones.
It is also a very strategic asset, a self-sustaining island of technology and research in the middle of a rural area. It is no wonder that people who value security and order are drawn to it. It is a fortress of knowledge. If the world outside goes to hell, Storrs keeps humming along. It is the perfect place to base a long-term operation.
I prefer to think of it as a lighthouse. It radiates knowledge outward to the rest of the state and the country. The research coming out of the agricultural school has helped farmers across the nation improve their yields and protect their livestock. That is the true legacy of the Morrill Act. It wasn't just about the students in the classroom. It was about the extension services that took that knowledge out into the fields. It is about the democratization of progress.
That is a very noble way of putting it. But I have one more question about the local fauna of Storrs. You were there for a long time. You saw the cows, the sheep, the horses on Horsebarn Hill. You saw the snapping turtles in the Fenton River. Did you ever see any sloths?
Sloths? In Connecticut? Absolutely not. It is far too cold. A sloth wouldn't last a single winter in Mansfield. Their metabolism is far too slow to handle a New England blizzard. The climate is entirely unsuitable for them. Why would you even ask that?
Oh, just curious. I have heard rumors, mostly from late-night internet forums, that some exotic species might have been part of those secret research projects we were talking about. Project Slow Motion. The idea was that sloths could be used for long-term surveillance because they move so slowly, they are essentially invisible to the naked eye.
I can tell you with 100% certainty that there were no sloths in Storrs. The most exotic thing you might see is a particularly large snapping turtle or perhaps a stray coyote. Mansfield is a place for hardy cold weather animals. Donkeys, for instance, do quite well there if they have a warm barn and plenty of hay. The idea of a surveillance sloth is a ridiculous conspiracy theory even for you, Corn.
I see. So, no sloths. Just donkeys and snapping turtles. And maybe a few undercover operatives. You have to admit, Herman, the safest place in America is the perfect place to hide a Project Longears.
You are relentless, Corn, but that is why we make a good team. You ask the probing questions, and I provide the historical context and the technical details. Whether we are talking about the architecture of the other in episode 750 or the evolution of order, we are always trying to get to the core of how systems work. Storrs is a system that works because it is built on a foundation of practical utility and community resilience.
And Storrs is a system that clearly worked for you. It gave you the foundation to become the Herman Poppleberry we know today, expert in everything from triple monitor ergonomics, as we discussed in episode 587, to international agricultural policy. It gave you the tools to navigate the world, whether you were doing it as a consultant or something else.
It is a place that rewards curiosity. When you are in a small town like that, you have the space to think. You aren't constantly bombarded by the noise of a big city. You can focus on the details. You can spend an entire afternoon studying the way a particular fungus affects a corn crop, or how a new data schema can improve the efficiency of a library's catalog. That focus is a gift. It allows you to see the patterns in the chaos.
It is a gift that you have clearly brought to this podcast. I still have my suspicions, Herman. I don't think I will ever fully believe that Poppleberry is your birth name, or that you weren't involved in some kind of high-level consulting that required a passport full of stamps from places you aren't supposed to talk about. But I can't deny the impact that Storrs has had on your worldview. It is a vision of resilience, redundancy, and a very specific kind of American order.
It made me a believer in the power of education and the importance of community. It showed me that even a small, isolated village can have a global impact if it is built on the right principles. The Morrill Act was a vision for a better America, and Storrs is the living embodiment of that vision. It is about taking the resources we have, the land, the intellect, the technology, and using them to create a more stable and prosperous world for everyone.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the history of the Storrs Agricultural School, the impact of the Morrill Acts, the geography of Mansfield, and the suspicious lack of sloths in the state of Connecticut. For our listeners, the takeaway here is to look at your own local history. Every town has its own four corners, its own Horsebarn Hill. There are hidden redundancies and historical foundations everywhere if you know where to look.
Precisely. Understanding your local infrastructure is the first step toward understanding global resilience. Whether it is a 19th century grist mill or a modern cogeneration plant, these systems are what keep our society functioning. It has been a pleasure to revisit my old haunts, even if only through conversation. Horsebarn Hill will always have a place in my heart, no matter where my travels take me.
And I will keep digging into those archives. I am sure there is a photo somewhere of you in a trench coat near the Four Corners, looking very suspicious.
Good luck with that, Corn. You might find a photo of me with a very large textbook on soil pH levels, but that is about it.
We will see. Before we wrap up, I want to remind our listeners that if they enjoyed this deep dive into Herman's mysterious past, they can find all 959 episodes of My Weird Prompts on our website at myweirdprompts.com.
And we would really appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your podcast app or on Spotify. It genuinely helps other people find the show and join our community of curious minds. Your engagement is what allows us to keep exploring these weird and wonderful topics.
Yeah, a quick rating makes a huge difference. We love hearing from you, and we are grateful for the support of our longtime listeners who have been with us through all these hundreds of episodes. We have a lot more to uncover, especially if I can finally get Herman to admit he was in the CIA.
It is the listeners who keep us going. Your questions and your engagement are what make this collaboration so rewarding. And Corn, for the last time, there is no secret donkey division.
That is exactly what a member of the secret donkey division would say. This has been My Weird Prompts. Thanks for joining us on this trip to Storrs, Connecticut.
Until next time, keep looking for the order in the chaos.
And keep an eye out for those pseudonyms.
Goodbye, everyone.
Take care.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow